Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Horror Realm. I'm Travis Bruce, and today we're doing another Women of Horror Spotlight. Today I have with us, she's an author, and she has two series out right now. The first one is called Blood Prophecy, and the second one is Dark Prophecy. I have with us today Barb Jones. Barb, welcome to the Horror Realm.
Thank you for having me. How are you?
It's a pleasure to have you on it. I'm doing great. So first of all, tell us a little bit about Blood Prophecy.
Prophecy is the first trilogy in the whole saga, and it talks about a queen that will unite all of the races as she comes into her power, and there are dark forces that go against her, and it's basically, it just brings her into a millennium of a prophecy that has been foretold.
Now, how long did it take you to put this trilogy together, this first trilogy?
Probably a couple of years. And it's just, I spaced them out because in between the books, I have novellas, like short stories of the main characters that bring them into this prophecy with the sinister forces and everything. So it's not just novels, but you have the short stories with it.
Nice. It's almost like a whole universe.
The whole universe.
So when you were writing the first book, did you already have a ending in mind to wrap up the trilogy?
It just kind of expand. When I write, I let the characters talk to me and kind of tell me what they want. So I don't plot it out. I write by the seat of my pants. So I'm a pantser.
Okay. Because I can imagine. Writing a trilogy. I would think. I've never written a book before, but I would think like, okay, well, how much do I want to save for the next book for this audience, and where do I want to cut it off?
I came up with the ending. I usually leave climactic endings so that my readers want more, which will prompt them into the next book. There's other standalone books that I'm working on right now that dive a little bit more into a finale because I'm not making those into a series. So if it's a series, I just kind of leave off each book with a climactic ending. So it's almost like when you watch a TV show, it's like that season finale. That's kind of how I give it for my novels, for my series.
That good old to be continued cliffhanger that we all love.
That's right. And you got to either read a little bit, and keep it going.
So what got you into writing horror novels?
I grew up, born and raised in Hawaii, and that's where legends come true. That's where, you have everything with Hawaii, like the gods, the goddesses, and all sorts of spooky stuff, right? So I grew up with that, and I just loved telling scary stories. Being from a large family, I loved to make my sisters jump. Because I was one of the youngest in the family. And so it's just, I grew up with that, and I always orally would tell stories, and I love to scare my friends. And it was a fourth grade teacher. So when I was 9 years old in fourth grade, she said, well, why don't we try to put your stories on paper? And so I have just been putting my stories on paper ever since.
Yeah, because horror, I can imagine, is a tough genre to write in, because when it comes to, listen, once again, I've never written before, but I can imagine writing thrillers, sci-fi, even romantic books. Compared to horror, you have to have that element of, it kind of has to make the audience a little unnerved, a little on the edge of their seat.
Yes. It does. It is a unique genre. It's probably my favorite genre because I love, especially when you go to movies, I love the jump scares.
Love it. Love it.
It's like I have to have a movie. I have to have a book that has the jump scares. And one of my current works in progress actually is going to have a lot more jump scares than any of my other books, just because I keep finding new ways to scare my audience. So I'm looking forward to that one getting back from my editor and releasing that.
I mean, I love horror movies and I also love horror books, but I think I like horror books more so because as the reader, you don't have that visual aid in front of you, which is good and bad sometimes. But when it's done right, when a writer does it right, it allows the reader to pretty much put themselves into the story and get and create their own visual aspect.
Correct. I absolutely agree with you because it allows the reader to use their imagination. So they're not given a defined actor and this is what this is what the actor looks like, right? This is what the character looked like. You could actually imagine even you being the character, which I love to do when I read. And so I love probably horror books more than the movies. But every once in a while, you got to have a good movie.
Other movies, yes, because I mean, you can kind of turn your brain off with the movies, which is always fun.
Correct.
Yeah. So, were you always a big horror movie fan growing up as well?
I was. Even, when you're little and your parents always say, you can't watch this, it's too scary. I'd be one of those kids that would sneak downstairs and watch the movies. And, it took me like, weeks to finish, Poltergeist, for example, when it first came out. It's, but I still finished it, just had to be sneaky about it. So I was always one of those kids. And then finally my parents just kind of, relented and said, okay, we can't change her.
So what was the first one that really scared you as a kid?
Probably say Poltergeist probably scared me just because it was like, the little girl going through the TV and everything, Carol Ann, and it probably that. But then, as I got older, like it expanded. So it's pretty much all of them. I just love them.
It was like for me, like it was definitely, I say it all the time, it was Candyman. And it was because Candyman attacked little boys in the bathroom. And like I remember like seeing that in the movie, I was afraid to go to the bathroom for like a good week, like with the lights off or like by myself. Like it really did something to me.
And you're a boy, so you're a little boy, so it's like you could relate to that, and it's like for me, it's like Poltergeist. It's like the little girl.
Exactly.
And so if you find something you can relate to, it really, I think, triggers a lot of those jump scare moments that authors try to give.
I agree.
Or directors with movies when they try to visualize it.
Now, as a woman horror writer, does it seem like more women gravitate to your books than men, or is it pretty much split down the line?
For mine, I found that it's been pretty much equal, but I would say probably more men.
Really?
Yes. Not by much, but it's more like, oh, I saw this, let's, they pick it up and they read and they're like, oh, this is really intriguing, because I do bring a lot of my male characters forward. I don't just leave them as bystanders. So I kind of try to give my readers an equal opportunity between the male characters and the female characters. So I really balance it out.
Now, did you put any of yourself in any of the characters in your books?
I put some of my friends in the characters.
Oh, do you? Now, do you tell your friends? Do you tell your friends that this is you?
I do, or sometimes they pick it up and they read it. They're like, "Wait a minute, that sounds like me." And then it's like, Barb, you have some explaining to do.
Yeah. See, I think I would find it. I would find honor if one of my friends put in a book, unless I was some kind of douchebag asshole character in it. I'd be like, wait a minute, do you actually see me like that? That's messed up.
Exactly. No, they're usually pretty proud when they find out, oh, this is just like me, or I've done this, and they can relate to it. But it's always been in a positive light.
That's always good. That's very good. Now, so you rolled this first trilogy over into a second trilogy, which is Dark Prophecy. Now, tell us a little bit about Dark Prophecy.
Dark Prophecy continues the saga, but the twist is it's told from the villain's point of view, but it continues on. So in this one, I kind of changed it up where the villain thinks he's the hero, so to speak. He's the protagonist. and everybody else is wrong. So he's out for his revenge and he's out for his blood. So it's a twist on the first trilogy.
Now, was that tough? I mean, was that tough as a writer to get in the head of a villain and kind of make him the hero?
It was, but I had done a lot of prep work in the beginning. So, when you think about it, I do a lot of research for my books. So I kind of interviewed what I would consider the villains. Okay. So, for example, I got into the minds of criminals. So I am with my books, I'm a part of a program for the commissary that brings my books to the hands of inmates across the U.S. Wow. So the inmates can buy my books. And so, I became like pen pals with some of them that wrote me and they follow me or something like that. And I just started talking to them. And it's like, I kind of got into their heads a little bit. I'm like, I need to ask you some specific questions about, what it takes to be the bad guy, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And they were willing to give me insight into, things like that. So it helped. Because
I feel like most bad guys don't see themselves as bad guys.
Exactly. And that's how my villain is in The Dark Prophecy. He thinks he's, the good guy. But I wanted to really tone into his thoughts and his emotions and bring him to life from that perspective. Not just, where I'm the bad guy and that's it. I wanted to really bring his character to life for my readers.
And a great villain, like when an author or even a filmmaker, when they create a great villain, as the audience, you can kind of relate to the villain. Like I say all the time, like Freddy Krueger is my favorite horror villain. And it's because I can kind of relate to him. And I'm not talking about the spin-off or anything. But if you just going off of the original movie, he was accused wrongly, and he was found not guilty, and then from there, parents did vigilante justice against him. So I mean, anybody can relate to that, and Wes Craven did such a great job because you can kind of he's an awful person and he's killing teenagers and so forth, but you kind of get where he's coming from.
Correct. And that's kind of what I wanted from my character in that series is, to bring that villain more to life. More that, my readers could sit there and say, well, wait a minute, maybe there's a little difference of an opinion. There's maybe some justice for him needed.
Now, one thing, so I'm a big reader and I read a lot of indie horror novels as well, self-published. And even watching, horror movies today, there's less and less character development. It's more about the shock, the gore, the jump scares. It's all about that. But I'm one of those horror fans that I love some character development. And I think it's important because whenever bad things happen to the characters, I have to feel something, whether like, oh, I'm glad, or like, wow, I feel sorry for something for them. Is that something important to you when you're writing your books to build the characters?
World building, you need the character building. And I need my characters to be developed so that the readers can relate to them. They can like them. They can kind of imagine themselves in my storyline, right? As part of one of the characters. So that's what I look for in my, when I build my characters, is that kind of relatable concept.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like that's important. It seems like today that's something I've noticing that we're starting to miss in horror books as well as movies.
It's like a lost concept. They just, like you said, they want the jump scares, they want that wow factor, they want to get to that climactic ending, but they don't want you to relate to those characters.
Why do you think that is?
It's a shame.
Why do you think that is?
Like when it comes to movies, I think it's probably because they want to jam pack so much in, because I mean, imagine it's not like Dune where it's 3 hours long, right? Mm-hmm. But a horror movie is usually what, an hour and a half, 2 hours. It's never really that long. So they try to cram everything in there. And I think they figure, more money would be the more jump scares rather than developing those characters, because that might make the movie longer. And that's really not what they are. In terms of books, I think every author is different. Some authors will take the time and really craft it. They're not worried about, oh, I have a small book, I just want to get it out there. Mm-hmm. So I think, because you can read some good horror novels that are, say, under 200 pages, and they've developed the characters. They've really taken the time. You've got those wow factors, you got the jump scares and everything. Or you can have a horror novel that only focuses on those elements, but then you don't relate to the character, which means, are you going to buy the next book from that author?
No.
And that's where it comes down to, so I look at it from all those perspectives.
Now, do you get feedback from the audience? I mean, do you pay attention to your reviews?
Sometimes do, to be honest with you. But most of the time I kind of have this attitude that my books may not be for everybody, right? So that may be a bad review. Do I get offended by it? No. But I do have my readers email me directly, or they communicate with me in one form or another. And those are the ones I focus on. That's the loyal readers, that They will read every book I put out, doesn't matter which one, right? So I focus on those more than, say, the negative reviews, because not every book is going to be everyone's cup of tea. And that's how I look at it.
I agree. Now, but the ones who are giving you good advice or constructive criticism, do you ever say to yourself, you know what, that's a good idea, or do you take that, any of that advice?
I actually put a spin on it, which kind of makes me a little different. Mm-hmm. I actually include my readers into my stories while I'm creating them. So, for example, I will hold contests every month through my newsletter, because that's the exclusive contest, not the social media contest. But I will have for my newsletters the exclusive contest in which they create a character in my book. They help me develop some of those changes. So I don't just use my beta read group. I actually use my newsletter audience and get their feedback.
So that's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing, because yes, even like with myself, I'm a YouTube creator. So but I think by being a creator, you're a little bit, I don't want to say a narcissist, but you this is your baby, this is your artwork, and that's the piece. And anybody who's critiquing it, even for good reasons, you're kind of like, ugh. But it takes you to be a big person to be able to step back and be like, you know what, maybe that is a good idea. Maybe let me try to incorporate some of this into my work.
Oh, exactly. And, and I include them because it just engages with them, and they like that. So they like the fact that they can, connect with me in a way with the books, and they get credit for it too. So it's not like I just sit there and say, okay, I'll take your idea and run with it. But I also ask them, what do you want to see with this character? How do you want me to develop the storyline with this character in it? So like my current contest for, with my newsletter group is, I actually asked them, okay, here's 3 possible endings for the story. You vote and tell me which one you want me to end this story with.
Oh, that's good.
And
that's good.
And with my newsletter base, I have over 20,000 subscribers. Okay.
Wow.
But it took me years to build it. So it's not like it happened overnight, but it took years to build it. And with that subscribing base, I've already gotten over half of my newsletter audience sending me what they want out of the 3 endings.
Wow. That's impressive. That's impressive.
And that's what I tell every author, even when they're starting out, is it takes time. I said, don't think this happened in 2 years, 3 years. I'm like, this is a newsletter that has been growing for over 5 years. to get to that.
It definitely takes time.
And you have to be creative with how you do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if that means, you sit there, and I do a lot of Comic-Cons or event conventions and panels where I'm there signing books and everything. So I get people that subscribe. So just think about the number of people that walk through the Comic-Con.
Mm-hmm.
And they sign up for exactly. And so that's how it got built. And then when they subscribe and, and after their name is entered into the system, it's like they get a welcome email. They get a welcome. Here's a chapter. Here's 3 chapters. They get all these things. So as an author, I'm more about thanking my readers for supporting me than the other way around. I'm not looking at sales. I'm not looking at profits. I'm thanking them for giving me the courage to write for them.
And that's so important. Now I go to a lot of horror conventions and even author horror conventions, mm-hmm. and I put them on my channel, the walkthroughs, and I'm also a marketing guy. But I tell a lot of newer readers, I'm like, horror conventions are the best place to get your name out there, especially to the horror community, because the people who are there are horror fans. They're looking to find new horror materials, and they like that face-to-face engagement.
Of course, you can't turn down the celebrities that are there, right? I mean,
that's a win-win too. I know.
I mean, how often can you say, "I've got his autograph, and I didn't have to travel"?
I always walk away. I mean, I usually go to a horror convention once a month, and I always walk away with like 2 or 3 books from authors that I never even heard of. But like, I talked to them, I met them, and their book looked amazing.
And it's like, it's like your opportunity to, like you said, like, find a new author, find a new story, find something that you're going to get lost in that book, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the other perks of the celebrities.
Yes.
Got to get their autographs. So no, it's a perfect way, because who knows, that indie author you just met might end up with one of the huge, traditional publishing contracts and become, this international big seller like Stephen King or something, right? You never know. But then you can go back and say, hey, wait a minute, I remember meeting that person.
And I got an autographed copy of their first book.
Exactly, before it became traditional.
Exactly. Because I always get the autograph.
And that's the most important thing to me, is that engagement with the audience. Or like when you're at those conventions, it's really like, you're not just there to sell your books, you're there to sell you as the author. It comes down to your brand, your identity, your marketing. Are you going to want to buy a book that's just from an author that's just sitting there playing on the phone?
No, you don't. I walk right past those authors.
You want the author that's like, standing or engaging, or, if they're lingering at your table for more than a few seconds, you can always, introduce yourself and say, hey, what do you like to read? Let's talk books.
Exactly.
And that's what I do.
Now, do you think, because I feel like when it comes to most horror authors, they are introverts. Actually, I don't know. I mean, I know for a fact a lot of them are introverts because I interview a lot. So, but don't you think it's hard being an author, especially in today's society? If you're not with a big name publisher, is it hard to be an introvert and trying to get out there and promote your book?
So, only because introverts don't really want to push themselves in front of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're at a con, for example, that's what you have to do.
You have to.
And it's almost like you have to be comfortable to be uncomfortable, as an introvert. So I'm actually kind of a mixture of both introvert and extrovert. So when it comes to my books, or when it comes to my career outside of writing, I'm an extrovert. But, when you're sitting there going on a date or something like that, I may be a little introverted until I get to know you first. But that's just the nature of the game, I think, right? But I do think in order to be an author, you really have to have some tendencies of being an extrovert to be successful, to get your books out there, to get your name out there, especially if you are an indie author.
I agree. And now I'm a hardcore introvert. but at the same time, for my profession, I kind of work in the sales aspect, marketing. So you have to be outgoing. You have to be talkative. You have to be an extrovert. So it forces you to do that. Plus, I have a YouTube channel where I interview people. I can't be an introvert and on here. Like I have to. But in my personal life, I stay to myself. I don't get my energy from people. But like in my profession, I'm forced to be an extrovert because I mean that's the only way I can do this.
And that's when I speak on panels or I speak at universities to talk to young authors about writing and publishing and everything. You have to be that extrovert. So if it's something I'm truly passionate about, like career and my writing, I'm as extrovert as it can get. But
yes.
Just I'm a little bit of an introvert, just like you.
Yes. I don't get my energy I hear people say, I get my energy from being around other people. I don't know. I feel weird being around other people.
Yeah. It takes some getting used to.
unless it's people who I know. You know what I mean? I'm not comfortable just hanging out with a bunch of strangers. It's not. I don't find that fun.
No, it's not. And I'm right there with you. That's why I said I'm between introvert and extrovert.
So Barb, where can everyone find your books?
All over the place, actually. So your standard, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million. I'm also international, so you can find me at the Book Dragon in the UK. It's an independent bookstore. Here in Florida, you can find me with, many different independent bookstores, even the big bookstores. I just recently came back from Munich, and I actually secured 2 contracts with a few different independent bookstores that carry English books, not just the German-based books. So they're going to carry my books as well in Munich. So everywhere I go.
That's great because my besides Americans, my second most watchers of my show are from Germany. So yes, I love the Germans. I love the Germans.
Yes.
I love the
Germans. The food.
Thanks guys for subscribing and watch my show. I love you guys. But yes, so yes, my German fans can grab your book as well.
Yes, in Munich.
Perfect. And Barb, where can everyone find you?
Basically all over social media. Just look up the handles like the Blood Prophecy. They can Google Blood Prophecy Barb Jones. It'll pull up all of my social media handles, whether it be TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, I'm out there. I mean, it's easy to find with just Googling Barb Jones Blood Prophecy and it all appears.
Okay. Well, listen, everyone, get out there and purchase Blood Prophecies as well as also Dark Prophecy series. Barb, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
Oh, it's no problem. No problem. Everyone, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce. See you guys next time. Take care.